Welcome to Auto Mundial, the weekly car news and review show, where this week we're checking out the incredible new Porsche 911 GT3.
We also have performance pickups from Ram and Ford, as well as a Civic Type-R arrival from Mini.
Plus the new Crossland X takes on the Renault Captur and Nissan Juke. That's all coming up. First though, the news.
Following on from the recent reveal of the 500 electric, Fiat has announced that all of its models will be EVs by the year 2030, promising that the new electric cars will cost no more than their petrol equivalents. Fiat prides itself on building desirable yet affordable cars, but that is still a bold claim, with most EVs costing significantly more than their ICE equivalents. The new 500 is currently Fiat's only pure electric vehicle, but an EV Panda is on its way along with a Tipo replacement in the future.
For the last decade or so, if you wanted a fast, full-size American pickup truck, you only really had one option, the Ford F-150 Raptor. However, with the recent release of the absurdly powerful Ram 1500 TRX, the Raptor was on the back foot. Now though, Ford has fought back with this, the new F-150 Raptor, unveiled just 6 months after the overhauled regular F-150. While the styling may look largely unchanged from the previous Raptor, with a big Ford script in the grille and muscular swollen arches, this new model has plenty of changes, both outside and in. Ford reckons the styling was inspired by the F-22 Raptor fighter jet, which seems like a bit of a stretch to us, but the new air intakes and bonnet bulge look undeniably cool. It still looks as mean as ever, with a wider stance and some new optional 37-inch off-road tyres. To complete the desert-bashing look, ground clearance has been increased to 13.1 inches thanks to some next-gen Fox internal bypass shock absorbers, designed to soak up massive impacts by adjusting the damping depending on the position of the wheel, even when the truck is airborne. Suspension travel all round has been increased by 1 inch, while the entire rear end running gear has been completely modernised to improve handling both on and off the road. Under the bonnet, there's still no big V8 like you get in the Ram. Instead, the Ford uses a tweaked version of the old 3.5 litre twin-turbocharged Coyote V6, but don't think that means the Raptor is all show and no go. Ford hasn't yet revealed accurate performance figures, but the old 2020 truck produced about 450 horsepower and could do the 0 to 60 sprint in just over 5 seconds, so expect the new one to improve on those. Pull yourself up into the cabin and you're greeted with a much sportier interior than you'd find on a regular F-150, with plenty of Alcantara and some body-hugging seats. It remains as practical as ever though, and absolutely packed full of tech. The new Raptor looks impressive then, but what if you don't want a 3.5 litre V6? What if you want something a little scarier? Well, you'll want this, the outrageous Ram 1500 TRX.
Oh yes, Ram has done things properly. There's no puny little boosted V6 here. Instead, under the bonnet lies a monster, a fully fledged muscle car legend of a motor, a Hellcat. More commonly found in the likes of the Dodge Challenger, this 6.2 litre supercharged behemoth produces 692 brake horsepower and 650 pounds-feet of torque. Yes, that's right, almost 700 horsepower in a pickup truck. Like the Raptor, it also has a beefed-up chassis to cope with some serious off-road punishment as you take on some of Baja's biggest dunes. The suspension has been revised both at the front and at the back with a specially developed set of Bilstein remote reservoir dampers. That fabulous engine has also been modified to adapt it to off-road driving. The airbox has been moved to the top of the engine to get cleaner air during high-speed desert driving, while the oil pan has been toughened up and the alternator moved higher up to increase the wading depth to 32 inches. Like the Ford, the Ram has a host of different driving modes to suit any environment you might find yourself in. The VAUXHALL mode has been specifically calibrated to work in Mexico's sandy peninsula, famous for its off-road racing and car-destroying terrain. The extra horsepower means a TRX can hit 60 miles per hour from rest in 4.5 seconds and run the quarter mile in 12.9.
It's quicker than the Raptor then, but perhaps not for long. You see, Ford hasn't taken kindly to being out-pickup by Ram and has now announced a new Raptor R due to be revealed later this year, complete with a Hellcat rivaling V8 motor, like the one from the 760 horsepower Shelby Mustang. For now though, the Ram is king of the hill, and the desert for that matter.
While family buyers used to opt for MPVs and people carriers, more and more of them are making the switch to crossovers and SUVs. Manufacturers are taking note, and brands like PSA-owned VAUXHALL are busily expanding their product ranges. This is the Crossland X, Opel and VAUXHALL's replacement for the Meriva MPV. It's a compact crossover designed with family buyers in mind. However, while it may be high-riding with chunky SUV styling, it's only available with front-wheel drive, so it's very much a road car. Inside, it's all very practical. There is plenty of space and headroom throughout thanks to the boxy roofline, although the narrow rear bench would be a struggle for 3 adults. That said, it's likely most owners will be carrying children in the back, where they'll find it spacious, if a little dark and gloomy. The cabin is quite nicely trimmed with some soft-touch materials and an optional panoramic roof. Dig a little deeper though, and the cheap-feeling scratchy plastics are everywhere. The screen itself is nicely angled towards the driver, but it does sit quite low, meaning you'll need to take your eyes off the road to glance at it. So, what is it like on the road? Well, it uses a similar range of engines as the Peugeot 2008 on which it's based, meaning a selection of petrol and diesel options. The one to go for is the highest output 1.2-litre turbocharged petrol motor. It's a commonly used engine across PSA products, but Opel and VAUXHALL's engineers have done a great job of refining it, making it seem much quieter than it does in some of its French counterparts. It's a revvy little 3-cylinder chucking out 128 brake horsepower. Not bad in a compact car like this. It's far better suited to town driving then, but how does it compare against its rivals? Well, in addition to its PSA stablemates, the Peugeot 2008 and Citroën C3 Aircross, the little Crossland X also has another French rival to contend with, the well-established Renault Captur.
On sale since 2013, the Captur is well established in this class and has been subject to various tweaks and updates throughout its time on sale so far. And with its most recent refresh, the Captur is now the car to beat in this class. Inside, the Renault gets a simple, clean dashboard with a smart infotainment screen. The whole cabin just feels a bit more modern and upmarket than the Crosslands, but it is still rather dark. But if it's a colourful cabin you're after, you might be better off with this, the new Nissan Juke. An acquired taste perhaps, but it certainly stands out in this class with its strange face and colourful trim. Built in the UK, the Juke comes with a 1-litre 3-cylinder engine borrowed from the Micra, but don't let that put you off. It churns out 115 brake horsepower via either a 6-speed manual or a 7-speed autobox. It isn't particularly fast, taking well over 10 seconds to get from 0 to 62, topping out at 112 miles per hour. There's more headroom too, making it feel much more like an SUV than the old car, which just felt like the jacked up hatchback it was. The refreshed cabin is a huge improvement too. It feels more modern than the Crosslands and airier than the Renaults. There are lots of sporty details like the flat-bottomed steering wheel and bits of red trim and lighting. It gets a bright central touchscreen and smartphone connectivity and a useful Wi-Fi hotspot.
There's really not a lot separating these three cars, but it's the Renault that gets our vote. It looks great and has a decent cabin. Performance is somewhat lacking, but it makes up for it with plenty of kit and its more premium image.
After the break, a hot Mini and the new Porsche 911 GT3. Coming up, the new Porsche 911 GT3. But first,
since its launch way back in 2000, BMW's interpretation of the Mini has become an icon in its own right. Millions have been sold, with everything from two-seaters to crossover SUVs being spawned along the way. Since the British tuning firm was bought by BMW, there have been a series of limited edition GP models. The most track-focused hardcore Minis available, and now there's a new one. It's called the Mini JCW GP, and it is the fastest and most powerful production Mini ever built. How, you may ask? Well, the JCW GP hits the dyno at 306 brake horsepower, all from a 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine. That is 75 more horses than the standard JCW, thanks to some engineering wizardry. Add to this a bespoke sports exhaust, 8-speed Steptronic transmission, bigger brakes and a new chassis setup, which puts it 10mm lower, and you have one mad Mini. And, as if you hadn't noticed, the JCW GP also features some special front and rear aprons, a massive roof spoiler and some outlandish flared carbon wheel arch covers that protrude from the bodywork like some sort of 80s touring car. Inside there are 2 seats, a steering wheel with paddles and a roll cage, but that's about it. Put it all together and the JCW GP goes from 0 to 60 in a tad over 5 seconds and onto a top speed of 165 miles per hour. It has reportedly gone around the Nürburgring in less than 8 minutes too. So, if the JCW GP is quick, stylish and race ready, how does it compare to the almighty Honda Civic Type-R?
from a styling standpoint, the Mini is just as ludicrous as the Honda. It's not quite as sleek as a Megane or Golf GTI, but we think hot hatches should look a bit crazy. But while the Mini may have the Civic matched for bonkers styling, inside it's a win for the Honda. Iffy infotainment aside, we love the red seats and modern look. The build quality is excellent and there's room for 4 adults. The boot is plenty big enough too, but the rear wing does hamper rearward visibility. Out on the road though, the Civic is still a stunning car to drive. The power delivery is rapid throughout the rev range, and it feels quicker than just about any other front-wheel drive hot hatchback. It's sharper too, with what must be the cleverest differential in the class. The ride is on the hard side, but you forgive it when you go for a drive, because the chassis is sensational.
In a game of top trumps, the Mini won't win you many hands. Its power and top speed put it second, 10 brake horsepower down and 4 miles per hour slower than the Type-R. It's pricier too, but that's unlikely to put off the Mini aficionados who have been queuing out of dealerships to get their names on the waiting list for one of the 3,000 being built. And if we're honest, we can't blame them. This is one of the most exciting looking hot hatches we have ever seen, and 300 horsepower in a Mini is guaranteed to be a riot.
The Porsche 911 has always been a great sports car, one for those who put the driving experience before all else when buying a car. The latest 992 generation car, though, while still a great driver's car, left us feeling like it was straying slightly into grand touring territory. After all, it's bigger than ever and more refined. So then, it seems that this, the all-new GT3, has a bigger gap in the range to fill than normal. First though, a bit of a history lesson. The first GT3 was introduced in 1999 with the 996 as a stripped-out track-biased Carrera, with aggressive aero, more power and a roll cage where the seats used to be. Power was sent to the rear wheels from a naturally aspirated flat six. It was a homologation car to allow the 911 to go racing, but it clung on to just enough creature comforts to make it perfectly usable on the road. Since then, with each new generation of 911, has come an evolution of the GT3 following the same simple recipe. But how about this new one? Is it still the pure driving machine we want it to be? In a word, yes. The new Carrera may be a bit more grown up these days, but the GT3 is still built to thrill. It's easy to spot thanks to its deep front splitter, vented bonnet and simply enormous rear wing. This being the biggest 911 to date, this new GT3 is heavier than the old car. Remarkably though, just 5 kilos heavier. With the PDK transmission, the GT3 weighs in at just 1,435 kilograms. And the weight-saving methods in place are deliciously nerdy. Various body panels are made out of carbon fibre reinforced plastic, the enormous alloy wheels are forged, there's a new lightweight exhaust system, and even the windows have been made out of thinner glass. This is the deeply impressive engineering we've come to expect from Porsche's GT department. But it's not just the weight they've been obsessing over. For the first time in 911 history, the GT3 now gets double front wishbone suspension, inspired by the RSR racers. Pleasingly, it retains its naturally aspirated high-revving 4-litre flat-six engine, and is the only current 911 without a turbo. Buyers can choose between a 6-speed manual gearbox or a 7-speed PDK with paddles. Fitted with the latter, the 503 brake horsepower motor will propel the GT3 from 0 to 62 miles per hour in just 3.4 seconds with some launch control assistance.
These days, however, Porsche isn't the only German manufacturer offering something for the track. This is the Mercedes-AMG GTR, and like the GT3, it's part of a complicated model lineup. The GTR sits somewhere in the middle, but it's a direct rival for the magnificent 911. It has a more conventional layout than the Porsche, with a big long bonnet housing a 4-litre twin-turbocharged V8 producing 577 brake horsepower. There's more power than the 911, but it's heavier, meaning the big Merc just loses out on the 0 to 60 sprint, 0.2 seconds behind its Stuttgart rival. It certainly looks the part though, with its big wing and green paint, and is just as capable at Grand Touring as it is blasting around the Nürburgring.
These cars are all about the way they feel to drive though. Each will suit a different kind of driver with different preferences. Us, we'll take the Porsche, but there really are no wrong answers here.
Join us again next week on Auto Mundial as we take a look at the new Bentley Bentayga S.